Da 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 ma da 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 ma da 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 ma da da dam lichadodi likat kala ya da dam da 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 ma da 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 ma da 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 ma da da dam bene shabbat nekabela shamo וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד.
Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Friday, and it is time for our Torah lesson on this week's portion called Pinchas, or Phineas in English. I think that's the name. And well, let's get down to business. This week's portion, the focus is on the reward for zealousy. Pinchas, as we all know, in the end of last week's portion, he kills the head of the tribe of Simon, and together with the Midianite woman, that they were committing not only idol worship but a terrible act of iniquity amongst the people of Israel. And Pinchas was rewarded with a great reward. As we know, God says He will give him His covenant of peace, and the Ibn Ezra explains that an everlasting priesthood will come out of Pinchas. As we know that the Kohanim HaGedolim, the great priests of Israel, came out of the line of Pinchas. And we know that the letter Vav is cut, and the Torah has to be written like with a broken letter, the letter Vav itself, and therefore it spells Shin Lamed Yud Mem Sofit. Those four letters in the Gematria formula come out to 380, and there were 380, according to most opinions, high priests that came out of the line of Pinchas. 300 that served in the second temple, 80 that served in the first temple, and all this again was a reward for Pinchas's act of zealousy. The question is again, when is an act of zealousy warranted? I mean, how could we allow for such a thing in Judaism, for acts of zealousy? What does it all mean? We know most in any kind of case of death penalty, there has to be a court system and witnesses and testimonies until finally there's a ruling that this person gets so and so punishment. But here we see something very unusual, and there are not many cases in the Torah where this law of zealousy applies. It applies to two other cases mentioned in the oral law. One is stealing from the temple, stealing holy items of the temple, kli shared, vessels that he used to serve in the temple, and one other refers to cursing God with a name, using a name of idol worship, cursing God with a name of idol worship. It's also these three interesting situations where zealousy is allowed, and of course there are many rules that are applied to zealousy, that only why it's happening, and a person already, if it asks the question if he's allowed to act in zealousy, and the answer is no, so it has to come in a very spontaneous reaction. And the question is, where does this all come to play? Why is there room for such a thing in the Torah? What I want to do is, in order to understand this a little more, bring down something that I studied this week, a book called the Balatanya, the famous Rav Zalman Meladi, the Admor Zaken, and he brought down I forgot what chapter it was, chapter 9, I think it's chapter 9, or chapter 8, he discusses the conflict that a person has within his heart. And he brings down something interesting. He talks about the two chambers of a person's heart. We know in our biology class that the heart is divided into the right atrium and the left atrium. As we know that the blood that comes from all the body parts, that is depleted of oxygen, is brought to the right atrium, and from there it's pumped to the lungs where it receives oxygen, and the blood that gets oxygen, full oxygen, is sent to the left atrium, and it is pumped from there through the aorta and all the arteries. It goes throughout the body and nourishes the various body parts and cells through the through the blood vessels and the capillaries, etc. So this, as we know, is the very simple biology that we all know. And interesting that the Baal Tanya talks about the right atrium being the side that really is depleted of oxygen, which is, he looks as the side of we know a person has a divine soul within him, and that rests on the right side, as we know. And the other side, which gets the new blood, the new powerful energy that is placed throughout the body, that really represents the other soul that we have. It's really the soul that's called a nefesh behemi, an animalistic soul that we all have, which means, as we call Yetzirah, but it's our power to do physical things in this world, to do all materialism in this world that we do, and all the pleasures of this world come from that side, from the animalistic side of us, like any other. It's something that we have in common with any other animal in this world. But we're human beings, so we have, of course, the right side. We have the spiritual aspect, the divine side within us. And the whole idea of a human being with an amazing divine soul is to overcome. There's a war that takes place between the left and the right side of the heart, which of course just represents something spiritual, right? As he says in Genesis, La'om mila'om yematz, when Esau and Jacob had this battle. Esau the evil, and of course Jacob had to try to overcome the evil forces of Esau, and Esau represents the left side, and Jacob represents the right side of the heart. So it's Yaakov having to overcome the evil forces of Esau, and that's the battle within us. We all have this battle, not only so we all know the nations that came out of Edomites, out of Esau, but of course within us we have both sides, and we have to overcome. And he brings out an amazing explanation of how a person, in order to really take this left side of his heart and all his desires and physical wants in this world, and he turns all that into love for Hashem and spirituality. So it's, for example, when a person, this of course, a person has to work his way up to this to reach these high levels. When a person eats, when a person does anything in this world that is really physical, but if he hasn't, his intentions are, I'm eating to be strong to worship my Creator. I'm working to support my family in order that we all can worship, Hashem. And so everything we do, we give a name. We do the name of Hashem for the sake of God, and that is taking these physical things and elevating them to a very, very high spiritual level. And therefore, the whole point of the right side of the heart is to overcome the left. The right side will give the tone, and to our left side, which has all the energy that should all be focused on divine energy. And for example, when a person you think about how does a person turn his physical desires into good, is by taking all these desires and all this energy that he has, which can be used in a very, very low way, animalistic way, and turning that into pure love of God. So think about how much energy there is involved when it comes to the desires that a human being has. We don't have to, of course, go into detail with different things in this world, how much a person is drawn to the dark side sometimes, and taking all that negative energy, because it's all pure uncleanliness, and turning that to the spiritual energy and bringing that all to Hashem, all to the love of God. That, again, is a great task that we all have to do in this world, each on his own level as he climbs the ladder of spirituality. And that, again, is the job of a true lover of Hashem, that could take his terrible, terrible desires and things that he's overdoing it, and turning that into all pure love of Hashem. And I thought of taking this concept, this idea, and actually connecting it to this week's portion of zealousy. If you take it, why is this zealousy here such an unusual law? And that, I think, is an amazing answer to the question. And why it's so loud for in certain instances. And it's so rare that it can actually happen. We only see it happening here only once throughout the entire Torah. And it is somebody that has literally been able to turn all this energy, this negative energy that's out there, into pure love of Hashem. So everything that his entire left side of these physical desires, materialistic desires, he completely turned them into love of Hashem. So anything that would come against that would just break him apart. He felt so zealous of God because he saw that how could this energy being used by, again, Zimri, ben salu, the kozit batsub, together with the act of terrible, terrible iniquity that they're doing. How could they do something like that when there's God in the world? Of course, here they are worshiping idols in front of everybody, doing these acts of uncleanliness, when all this should be focused on loving of Hashem. And this is doing the exact opposite, taking away from the love of Hashem. And that's where his zealousy came, and he did what he did. And again, the God said right out, I am giving him the covenant of peace. Wow, he seemed to have done the opposite of peace. He went out in such an act of zealousy, and seems to be, a very violent act, of course. But he turned these lowest animalistic qualities and traits into love for Hashem, and he brought it so high, and that's what the really meaning of zealousy is, and that's why here it was an exception to the rule. And even if someone already asked, can he act zealous, and the answer is no. It has to happen so spontaneous, and it happened only once in history. In this situation, as we see here, that's why Pinchas, he has an everlasting blessing of peace, that the priesthood will come from him. And he himself was blessed with a very, very long life of 400 years. If we look into the Torah, we figure out that he's actually 400 years he lived, but I'm not planning to go into that now. So that, I think, is one very, very important lesson of this week's portion, where we can definitely be zealous, not in the Pinchas sense, because no one's on his level, but to be zealous in the sense of trying to turn all our physical weaknesses that we have and our desires that we have, to turn that into love of Hashem. Let's be zealous in that. Let's begin to work on our spiritual connection to God, and how much we can improve ourselves by our complete devotion to Hashem, and taking all these qualities that we have. If you focus sometimes on our anger, or on our in just all kinds of things that we're completely pulled away from Hashem, let's take all that and say, okay, Hashem, I'm going to worship you with all this powerful energy I have, but on the negative side, I'm going to turn that into positive energy and worship you with all my heart and soul. This will help us, of course, in prayer and in all ways of becoming better individuals, if we really learn to focus and work on this great, great task, which is a very, very difficult task, of course. So again, this is one of the strong messages that I see in this week's portion, and I recommend for all of us to try to apply it. I'd like to say one more, see, look at the time as we talk, we're limited, of course, in time-wise. One more interesting, here I heard of this beautiful idea of how we see traits are passed down from father to son, mother to daughter, how traits are passed down. And we see in this week's portion an absolutely amazing thing. We see how the Benot Tzlofchad, the daughters of Tzlofchad, their love for the land of Israel and wanting inheritance in the land of Israel. And where did this all come from? It came from the fact that they were descendants, of course we know, of Yosef HaTzadik, of Joseph, Yosef HaTzadik, who told his children, bury me in the land of Israel. His love for the land of Israel, buried, take his bones, get me out of this Egypt, get me out of here. I don't want to be stuck here, my bones in Egypt. I want to go to the land of Israel. And this was with all fervor and zealousy. He passes down, of course, to his children how much the importance of the land of Israel is. And this was passed down from of course, into Benot Tzlofchad, from his descendants. So we see when a person has a certain quality and he educates his children, that love, and he's an example of that love is passed down, and then you'll see the children following your footsteps. And this beautiful idea I saw again in this great rabbi that I enjoyed like hearing, Rabbi Baruch Rosenblum, who mentioned this concept, and I think it is an amazing lesson for all of us. And we should look at it on the good side, because unfortunately this can happen the other way around, when children see the parents as examples, but unfortunately as poor examples of not acting properly, not behaving properly, then later on it will be passed down to the children as well. So we have to take this idea of Yosef, how his love for Israel was passed down to his daughters, Benot Tzlofchad, and how they desired so much to have inheritance in the land because of who their father was and how they were brought up and educated. So it's all focused on educating our children to loving and doing the right thing as well, and we'll pass down the good traits. Shabbat Shalom. It's been great being back again. Love and miss you all. Shabbat Shalom. B'sarot tovot, yeshurot v'nechama.